All right, so today we're diving into some pretty bold ideas about wealth building. We're looking at this, well, he's a self-made millionaire, but he's got some, let's just say, strong opinions. And look, we're not here to tell you what to think, but we are going to break down his arguments, see what we can learn, you know?
And that's the key here, coming at this with a critical but open mind. This guy's perspective really taps into this feeling a lot of us have these days, this kind of impatience with the old ways of doing things and wanting to see results, like yesterday.
He jumps right in, too. His main argument, it's basically that the traditional ways of building wealth, they just don't work anymore. Savings accounts, real estate, he's like, forget about it.
And he uses these examples to try and prove his point, right? Like he talks about how interest rates on savings are practically non-existent compared to what they used to be.
Yeah.
And then housing costs, sky high.
Oh, tell me about it.
Wages haven't even come close to keeping up.
He uses this crazy example of a house you could have snagged back in the day for, like $85,000. $85,000. Can you even imagine?
It's mind-blowing.
That same house now. Probably worth $500,000, if not more.
Easily.
And his point is, with the kind of money people are making these days, these low interest rates, it's almost impossible to get to that level of wealth through those old methods.
This is where it gets interesting because it really makes you think, right? Are these traditional methods actually outdated? Or are they just, slower? Are we just so caught up in this get-rich-quick mentality that we've lost sight of long-term financial stability?
It's easy to get swept up in his energy, though.
Right.
He's a really captivating speaker, even when he's being, well, a little much.
Exactly, and that's the whole point of this deep dive, right? We're trying to separate the exciting delivery from the actual substance of the argument, because how someone says something doesn't necessarily make it true.
He's a huge proponent of hard work and despises anything that even hints at passive income. He straight up calls it a scam.
Which is kind of extreme, right?
Totally.
But it's interesting because at the same time, he's super focused on this idea of monetizing attention. He's basically saying your attention is like this new form of currency. And he uses the example of this teenager, like 16 years old, who's supposedly making $45,000 a month just by repurposing this guy's content for TikTok.
Wait, $35,000 a month from TikTok?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that sounds like one of those too good to be true things, but it does make you think about how much the online world has changed everything.
Absolutely. It shows how influential the online world is and how, younger generations are really good at using platforms like TikTok, even if it means using content that, well, someone else created.
See, and that's where it gets kind of complicated. You've got this teenager making a ton of money, which is amazing, but they're essentially profiting from someone else's work.
Right. And it brings up this whole question of intellectual property in the digital age,
Yeah.
Where's the line between being inspired by someone and just straight up exploiting their work? That's a tough one.
And it all goes back to this attention economy idea, right? We're constantly bombarded with information. It's harder and harder to capture and hold someone's attention. And it's basically saying that anyone who figures out how to do that, how to really grab people's attention in this digital world, that's the key to unlocking wealth today.
And, he's not entirely wrong. The way we consume information, the way we work, even the way we connect with each other, it's all being shaped by this attention economy, this constant fight for our attention.
And it's not just about working hard. It's like he can't stand quitters. Yeah. He says he actually bans people from his online courses if they unsubscribe.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. Makes you wonder about that kind of all or nothing philosophy,
He sees quitting as this weakness. He gives this example about someone unsubscribing from his course because of a credit card issue, and instead of even considering there might be a legitimate reason, he just labels them a quitter.
And that's a really important thing to remember. Context matters. Especially when someone's selling a certain lifestyle or philosophy like this, you have to ask, is this advice actually good for the audience? Or is it just about pushing their own narrative?
He gets into some, well, interesting territory with government control, too.
Right. It's worth mentioning that there's some, let's call them conspiracy theories in this material, particularly around government control on certain social issues,
He talks about the green agenda and LGBT rights, saying it's all about control and not about actually caring for the environment or equality. Look, we're not here to dissect his personal beliefs, but you have to acknowledge this kind of talk, whether you agree with it or not, it can be really divisive.
Absolutely. It's crucial to be skeptical about those kinds of claims and look for information from credible sources before forming an opinion. Don't just take one person's word for it.
His whole worldview seems so black and white. Either you're with him or you're In his words, a brokey who's going to fail.
Mhm.
Not a lot of nuance there.
And that's exactly why it's dangerous to put anyone or any philosophy on a pedestal. Even if some of his strategies work, following him blindly, without thinking critically, that can backfire big time.
He even goes off about billionaires buying beachfront properties as proof that climate change is fake. Like, come on.
That's a perfect example of what we call cherry picking.
Mm.
Just because someone's wealthy doesn't make them immune to climate change, and it certainly doesn't disprove all the scientific evidence.
Okay, so we've talked about how much he dislikes quitters, his belief in hard work, his distrust of those old financial strategies. So what's his alternative? What does he actually think people should do to make money in this, as he calls it, new world order?
Well, this is where his philosophy takes an interesting turn. He seems to think that success is all about tapping into your inner warrior, this constant self-improvement thing, pushing your limits and never settling.
It's like that saying, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. He seems to really believe that.
And, mindset is important. Believing in yourself, bouncing back from setbacks, being open to learning, that's all crucial for success.
There's a line, though, right, between healthy self-belief and what he seems to be promoting, which is almost delusional.
It's true. He does seem to think he's stumbled upon this, secret formula for life, and anyone who doesn't see it his way is, to use his word, a peon?
And that's where it gets kind of dangerous, right? This idea that there's only one right way to be successful, one size fits all. It's just not realistic. Everyone's different.
Exactly. People have different circumstances, different strengths, different goals. What works for one person might not work for another. There's no magic bullet.
He's also really into this whole hustle until you drop mentality, like the concept of rest or enjoying what you've earned is lost on him. He even says he views digging a hole for $1 billion as work.
Yeah, that's a bit extreme. His work ethic is one thing, but that level of intensity isn't for everyone, nor should it be the expectation. Glorifying overwork can be really damaging. Burnout is a real thing.
It's funny, though, because he also talks about working smarter, not harder. He says that once you've put in the hard work, you can leverage your time and resources to, maximize your output.
And that's where we see a bit of practicality shining through, right? He's emphasizing efficiency, delegation, streamlining processes. Those are all valuable skills.
But then he contradicts himself, doesn't he? He'll talk about working smarter, and then in the next breath, he's bragging about working 18-hour days. How do you advocate for working smarter, not harder, while pulling all-nighters all the time?
That contradiction, it really highlights this tension in his message, right? The struggle between striving for efficiency and getting sucked into this always-on mentality. And it's something I think a lot of us can relate to in today's world.
It's like he thinks that any minute you're not working, you're falling behind.
It's this cultural shift where being productive is the ultimate badge of honor and taking time off is almost seen as lazy. But downtime is crucial. It's when we recharge, when we get those creative sparks.
So we've covered a lot here. His views on traditional wealth creation, his monetizing attention thing, his intense work ethic. What does it all mean for our listeners? What are the key takeaways from this deep dive so far?
I think the biggest takeaway is the importance of critical thinking. This guy, he's presenting a very specific and honestly extreme perspective on wealth. It's important to engage with his ideas, but do it critically. Question his assumptions, consider other viewpoints.
Exactly. Just because he's had some success doesn't mean his methods are right for everyone, or even ethical for that matter.
Another key point is balance. While his emphasis on hard work and self-improvement can be motivating, it has to be sustainable. Sacrificing your well-being for wealth, that's not a recipe for happiness.
They say money can't buy happiness.
Very cliche.
Maybe, but true.
Absolutely. True fulfillment comes from finding that sweet spot where your values, your passions, and your work align. It's about success on your own terms, not chasing someone else's definition of it.
And that seems to be something he struggles with. He talks about how much he hates quitters. But there's a difference, right, between quitting something that's no longer serving you and giving up on your dreams.
100%. Quitting gets this bad rap, but sometimes it's the smartest move you can make. Knowing when to change direction, when to cut your losses, that's crucial for growth.
It's about recognizing that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the journey.
Yes. Embracing a growth mindset, viewing setbacks as learning opportunities, being willing to adapt, those are the keys to unlocking your potential.
So it sounds like you're saying this guy's approach, it might work for him, But it's not a blueprint for everyone.
Exactly. Blindly following someone else's formula for success without considering your own values, goals, dreams, that's a recipe for disaster. You have to find your own path.
And that path doesn't have to look like anyone else's.
It shouldn't. The most fulfilling journeys are often the ones that are uniquely our own.
It's like he's created this image of himself, the ultimate winner, right? The guy who's cracked the code of life. But it really makes you wonder, what does winning even mean? Is it really all about this constant hustle, or is there more to it than that?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, is it just about racking up wealth and status? Or is there something more, like finding your purpose, feeling connected? It really makes you think about what winning means to you.
You know, I thought was interesting. For all his talk about money and success, he doesn't really say what he does with his wealth. It's like the goal is just to get it, not to actually do anything with it.
It's something you see a lot, I think, in these conversations about wealth. The focus is always on getting more, but it's just as important to think about how you use it. Real wealth, to me at least, is about making a positive impact. Not just for yourself, but for others, for the world.
So what's the verdict then? Is this guy a genius, a fraud, or somewhere in between? What do you think?
I think he's a product of his time. His ideas, that they tap into a lot of the anxieties and hopes people have in this digital age, this need for quick results, simple solutions, a sense of control in a world that can feel chaotic. He's selling this idea of winning at life. But as we've seen, it's not that simple. There are contradictions, there are downsides.
Oh, sure. It's easy to get caught up in his energy, but you got to be critical too. Don't just take his word for it. Think for yourself. Do your own research.
Absolutely. This deep dive, it wasn't about telling you what to believe or how to live your life. It was about giving you the tools to think critically and make your own decisions, your own path to success, whatever that looks like for you.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with this. In a world obsessed with shortcuts and instant gratification, remember that real, meaningful success, it takes time. It takes work. And sometimes it takes embracing the messy, unpredictable journey along the way.